Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential podcast. I am Andrew Kahn.
I'm Ryan Zook.
I'm Aaron McMahon.
The Michigan football team remained undefeated with a very impressive road victory over Wisconsin. It was a dominant performance that changes the outlook for the season. How much so, we discuss on Wolverine Confidential. All right, guys, good to be with you here on a Sunday night as we're recording. People can listen or watch this episode Monday morning. For those who thought, I wouldn't just like to listen. I'd like to watch them talk about this as well. This episode is for you. All right, guys, let's get into Michigan's win over Wisconsin. I'll keep this brief before I throw it to you. I knew that the Wisconsin crowd was bad. I got that inside info, before this game. The 20-year streak that I was, pumping up, it's not like it was 20 wins in a row. It wasn't even 10. It was 5 wins in a row at Camp Randall, okay? And Wisconsin's quarterback play, I said, was very sketchy coming in, yet I still picked Wisconsin. You guys both did as well. Any regret over your prediction? Because I'm having some.
Regret? No. I thought it was going to be like a close game either way. And I think I said this either on the podcast with Ryan the other day or with another interview, but I could have saw it. I could have, if the game was in Ann Arbor, I probably would have picked Michigan to win by a point or two. I thought it was going to be a close game either way.
It was that second half against Rutgers, man. It really it made me shy away from picking Michigan, and the part of the Notre Dame Wisconsin game that I watched, Wisconsin didn't look too bad, especially on defense. Their defense looked really good, and I just didn't think Michigan would be able to consistently move the ball. And I did not see Michigan. I did not foresee Michigan having such a dominant performance defensively either. Their pass rush was insane. Wisconsin's offensive line got demolished throughout the game, just absolutely worked. And I just did not see that coming. And here we are 38-17 game later, and Michigan's 5-0 and Wisconsin's season's basically over.
And when I say regret, Aaron, just to be clear, it's about, we had a good thing going, picking all the games correct so far, the scores, we were okay for the most part. And then we get one wrong here. That's all I mean. We could have kept it rolling. Okay.
We're gonna get some wrong. There's no
fair enough.
I'm just mad that we all had the same exact scores too.
Right.
That's what I regret, is picking the same exact scores as you guys. I maybe we should not just have them completely blind going in and maybe
listen, I say to the listeners, listen to the analysis, not to the final prediction, because in the end that you can't count on. But everything we said, I'd say to a certain extent came true. Now the game itself, Michigan jumped out early with a nice trick play, a little toss back to Cade McNamara, who then finds a receiver wide open in the end zone. I just thought, Michigan's play calling, and Zook, I know you might disagree, but, I thought it was rightfully aggressive for the most part.
It almost seemed like they've been building up to this game. We talked about it in the previous weeks, whether this was the offense, this is all they had. Could they throw the ball more? Was there more, in the playbook to kind of, unveil? And they confirmed as much Saturday. I mean, you saw a lot more aggressive play calling. You mentioned the flea flicker. They did some other things with the passing game. They're starting to opening it up, and I think it was a very telling comment after the game by quarterback Cade McNamara when he said, we decided to get more aggressive, and he basically said this is there's no reason why we shouldn't be like this, playing like this going forward. They've been working on this stuff all season. I think it was partly a coaching decision to run the football predominantly in those first 3.5 games. But they also realize now they're going to have to throw the ball. For the knock against Wisconsin's defense, Michigan only rushed for 112 yards on Saturday, and they ran the ball quite a bit, or they tried to. Didn't have a ton of success. Again, it was 3 yards per carry, just like Rutgers the week before. So it just goes to show for Michigan to win these big games and they continue winning, they're going to have to throw the ball. And they did so with pretty good success on Saturday.
No, yeah, they did. And I thought they ran the ball better than I expected them to. I mean, no team had 50 yards rushing against Wisconsin at all this season. So for Michigan to get over 100 is, I mean, at least kept Wisconsin's defense honest a little bit, to open up a little bit more. Yes, yeah. And
Um,
yeah, I mean, I thought Cage struggled a little bit early, but I mean, though he made a couple, both passes to Cornelius Johnson were right on the money. I think that was the only two good parts of Cornelius Johnson's game, but Roman Wilson is. I mean, Michigan finally needed or has needed someone to step up at receiver, and it looks like maybe they found their guy. I was really impressed with him, and it looks like he might be the number 2 guy here moving forward if Saturday's performance was any indication.
let's go back to Cade first, if we can, because again, reading, your stock up, stock down, I get to, you tip your hand a little bit on how you feel about the game, so I get to see it. And I mean, I thought McNamara was good. Like early, some of the throws were behind the receivers, but there were some drops too. Those were like balls that could have been caught. And then also receivers not doing him any favors with these routes. I mean, third and 6, you got to run a 6 or 7 yard route, not a 5 yard route. So I think there was some of that. I mean, he hung in there. He took some hits. Delivered the ball downfield. Like I thought he did well. I mean, he did better as the game went on, I thought too.
Right.
But yeah, I thought he did well.
Yeah,
the problem with that too is I have to start writing that in the first half, and I didn't think he played well. And then it's like second half, it's like I'm scrambling to get it up. I'm like, so, but yeah, no, I mean it's one of those flash reactions type of things. And I mean, he did okay. I was just looking at his PFF grade though. I didn't think he was like the second best player on offense overall, but it was a good enough performance, and he showed enough that that the Michigan can win a game with him behind center.
Cade, I don't think, from an arm strength perspective, I don't think he's good enough to necessarily win you a football game. Yeah, yes, he won them last year against Rutgers, and I think that was a little different scenario, different situation. But like, I think he's played well enough to where it puts Michigan's offense in a good position to not only score, but move the football. And I think at this point, that's all you can ask for from him. Michigan's had enough of a potent rushing attack. The receivers are starting to step up and develop. And I think that's the key to Michigan's passing game. And we've talked about the last couple of weeks, developing these guys, getting some of these guys comfortable and in rhythm. And you're starting to see it. I mean, obviously Cornelius is the guy we've talked about quite a bit. Roman, you just guys mentioned, they're trying to get Dalen Baldwin more involved. You saw that in the first pass of the first play of the game on Saturday. And then Dalen had that 56-yard touchdown catch from J.J. McCarthy. But they're trying other guys, and they have no choice. They have to get more guys involved. They have to get more production from some of these other group of receivers. Now I think they really need to get Mike Sanders still going. He's had a couple of catches the last couple of games. He needs to be their next guy, because if Michigan can have 3 or 4 weapons on the outside, it just makes their passing game, that much more effective.
Yeah, I mean, Roman Wilson, coming out party. I mean, he had how many catches in this game? 6, 7, 8, something like that. Let's look. 6. Okay. Most targets, on the team. He had 3 or 4 catches coming in, I think. So, and at least one of those was on one of those little, basketball chest passes. So, that's really basically a run. So, outdoing his production just in one game, and some tough catches too. So yeah, you're starting to see, these candidates to possibly step up. I referenced the play calling, and are we under the assumption that like Harbaugh as the head coach decides whether to go for it on 4th down, and then, whoever the play caller is, Josh Gaddis, as far as we know still, then calls the play, but it's Harbaugh's decision whether we're going to punt now or go for it. Is
that's a good question, but I get the impression it's exactly that. Jim is kind of setting the tone, and he mentioned it quite a bit Saturday after the game, that walking into Camp Randall Stadium Saturday morning and there in Madison, he just felt this vibe from this team that they were hungry and eager to win. And I think in a way that kind of helped set the tone for the play calling early on. You saw them go for it on 4th down. Was it 2 or 3 times in that first drive alone?
Mm-hmm.
It was clear to me that they wanted to be aggressive in nature, and I think it's kind of a top-down philosophy, whereas Jim is setting the tone, and he's at the same time, delegating the play calling to Josh Gass, because there's been no indication, from anyone else that the play calling is not coming from Josh Gass. This is Josh's book and his game, and so far I think, it's a different offense from what we've seen in years past, obviously, but I think from their schedule perspective, in terms of them like slowly kind of, unraveling some of these plays and these, the play calling, the plan. I think they've done a pretty good job here through 5 games.
Speaking of play calling, I think Michigan's defense won them the game on that first drive after Michigan went for it on fourth down, ran a predictable play on the read option, giving off to Hassan Haskins right up the middle, got stopped there. If Wisconsin scores on that possession, you're down on the road, you lose all the momentum right away, and Wisconsin's feeling it. I think that could have changed the game tremendously. But I mean, a huge stop by Michigan's defense, and they continued that momentum through the first until the last drive of the first half, and that Graham Mertz made 3 nice passes that did him in the end zone. But yeah, that was even after they made it onto the first fourth down there. I'm like, whoa! I mean, you can't. That's risky. That's risky. But good job on Michigan's defense to come up. But I still didn't like that call to go for it again, or at least the play call on that fourth down.
On that topic, before the game even started, Wisconsin won the coin toss and elected to defer to the second half. And I thought it was surprising just because Michigan has shown, I mean, before Saturday, obviously we all know they had never trailed. They had always scored first. And like, why would you give the ball to Michigan to start? And obviously Michigan didn't score on that first drive, but it gave them an opportunity to kind of get the lay of the land and get their bearings there in the stadium. And I just couldn't. I was surprised by that. And
analytics, man, analytics.
Most teams defer, but I hear
guess.
what you're saying as far as the rationale for not doing it in this game. But yeah, okay. Ryan mentioned the defense. We're how many minutes into this podcast, and we haven't really gone into it yet. We need to. The defensive line, I mean, all 3 levels, but the defensive line just put so much pressure on the quarterback all day. I mean, they knocked out a quarterback, which is never the goal from like a sportsmanship standpoint, but it was as clean a hit as you could possibly have. On a quarterback, from Daxton Hill there, and just David Ajabo, Aiden Hutchinson. There's no one player in the Big Ten that's proven they can block him yet, and even 2 often, they have to hold or they still don't prevent him from getting through. Just so much pressure on the quarterback. They made, when Wisconsin did complete passes, it was just tip your cap or what a throw, what a catch type plays. I mean, that drive at the end of the half. Sure, the short field was set up by the questionable squib kick, but the 2 passes that were completed to, from Mertz to DK were just dimes and great catches. So, wow, Michigan's defense was stellar on Saturday.
Yeah, on that note, I mean, first off, I think Aiden has really benefited from his different positioning this year. I think not being set on the line and being kind of upright has opened things up and given him more flexibility in his abilities. And I think that's opened up other things for the rest of the defense, because teams obviously have to hone in on him, but you're getting production from the other side of the field, whether it's a Jabo or whoever else is on that. Jalen Hurrell's been playing quite a bit. You're getting production on the other side, and I think it's almost like Michigan's in a really good situation right now where you're getting production from several people. You got a blend of new guys playing for the first time or getting their feet underneath them and feet wet, and they're succeeding. So I think Michigan's in a very best case scenario right now from the defense. I've been very impressed with how quickly they've kind of adapted. And I think the big thing here is you're not seeing, it's not predictable. We talked about this in the past with Don Brown years past, but like Paul Chryst obviously didn't know exactly how to game plan this thing. And you saw that on Saturday. Michigan was throwing all kinds of different things at Wisconsin's offensive line. Graham Mertz looked a little hesitant at times. He's getting hit all the time, and that certainly doesn't help. It was by far, I thought, Michigan's best defensive performance so far.
Teams still have no idea how to game plan for Daxton Hill. It is insane how they still can't get a read on what he's doing on any given play. It is really remarkable to watch. I mean,
it's hard to. I mean, when you like lining up the line or dropping back or blitzing the quarterback, it's hard to game plan for someone like him because he's not a big guy. So you don't necessarily want to throw a big lineman at him, but like he's quick enough to like he can kind of go wherever he wants or get wherever he wants to. And that's what makes him, I think, so valuable here. I think they have unleashed a new part of Daxton Hill's game that I think some of us had been expecting to see in years past, because Don Brown had always talked about how well of a cover corner, how well of a corner cover DB Dax was. We saw it at times, but he was still locked in that that typical safety spot. They didn't throw him around, put him around the field as much as they probably should have. You're seeing that with Clinkscale and McDonald. And it's paying dividends.
We talked about before the season, Michigan, where are the all Big Ten type players? They're going to elevate this team to exceed expectations. You said there was Aiden Hutchinson, and who else really was there? Now, not that we ignored Dax Hill, for example. We knew what kind of a talent he was, but still, the production wasn't necessarily there. Well, now, as friend of the pod, Joel Klatt pointed out on the broadcast, like they've got one at every level. They've got Aiden Hutchinson, they've got Josh Ross playing at that level, and they've got Dax Hill on the back end. It's like, and these other players are not bums out there. Like they're, Nakai Hill Green, I thought played well. David Ajabo, as I mentioned earlier, playing well. Their corners are continuing to improve and play with more confidence. So, yeah, they've just been really impressive. And yeah, Aaron, you're exactly right. How it's all meshed with this new staff. I mean, 5 games in, an A+ for Jim Harbaugh's offseason hires.
I said this in the offseason, and Jim was asked about it Saturday after the game about how well Michigan is doing at maximizing its talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I said in the offseason, I said they need to accentuate their positives. What are their positives? Well, you've got a edge rusher to Aiden Hutchinson who can get to the quarterback and apply pressure. You've got experience at linebacker with Josh Ross, and you've got playmakers in the secondary with Dax Hill and Brett Hawkins. So you need to find ways to get them to the football and to make plays. And you kind of hide the rest or do other things to protect your younger, less experienced, less talented players. And Michigan's doing that, and they're succeeding. And so far, they're 5-0. Now, that's not to say they're not going to have there's not going to be bumps in the road here in the next couple of weeks with whether it's Penn State, Michigan State, whatever. But they're making the most of what they have defensively. And if we would ask this like this time last year, we all would have said, well, their defense just isn't very good. So I think that just goes to show how drastically things can change and change for the better in 12 months with just like a simple scheme change or philosophy change. And it's so far so good.
And, the one thing they weren't doing earlier in the year, forcing turnovers, they now did that. 3 of them on Saturday, granted one, in special teams, but still. While on the other side, continuing to protect the ball. Alan Bowman's not feeling great about coming in for a snap and ending Michigan's streak of not turning it over by throwing an interception. So that's.
I'm sure he'll talk about that on his podcast too. If any of our listeners haven't listened to Bowman and Valari's podcast, I highly recommend it. It's a funny listen.
Almost as entertaining as this one.
Almost.
Yeah. So now again, Michigan is 5-0, and this was, if Washington was the initial preseason kind of stumbling block potentially, this one was a major hurdle, and Michigan clears it with ease, and now they're 5-0, going to a Nebraska team that is playing better of late. Certainly, just absolutely demolished Northwestern on Saturday night, but still as uncompetitive in other games this season. So. And then Northwestern and a bye, like we're looking at potentially now 7-0 showdown with maybe an undefeated Michigan State too. I just wonder, how this win changes your perception of what this team can do, because it's certainly changed mine.
I'm glad you asked this because I was thinking about it on the plane ride home earlier today. I'm assuming that Michigan wins Saturday and Nebraska and go 6-0 into the bye week. I guess that's assuming. I guess you never know. It is going to be a road game and Nebraska.
Spread smaller than I would have thought.
I can't believe their Michigan's only favored by a point. Like what?
Well, it's up to 3 now, but
is it up to 3?
It's still a low number. It's lower than I maybe expected it to be.
Yeah.
But I'm anticipating Michigan wins on Saturday just based on everything we've seen. They have shown that they can go on the road and win a big game, so that tells me they should be able to win Saturday in Lincoln. So assuming they come out of that game with a victory and the bye at 6-0. I think it's a very realistic possibility. They at least should split the back half. You've got a home game against Northwestern. You've got a road game at Maryland, which will be difficult, but I think they should be able to win that game. And then Indiana, who has been a disaster this year, has been I think one of the biggest surprises of the Big Ten, maybe from a dropping standpoint. But I think right now a realistic final record here is that 9 wins. I think Michigan is looking at a 9-win season right now at the very least. And if they come out and surprise some folks and win Michigan State, I mean, you're looking at a potential 10-win season. I know I know some fans don't want to hear that, or they're hesitant about that or whatever. But
I think they like to hear it.
Yeah, this team I'll say it. This team is a lot better than I thought they would be on both sides of the ball, especially defensively. They are miles ahead of where I expected them to be at this point. And that's one of the reasons why I think they're 5-0. The offense, you can talk all you want about the passing game, but they've done the job. They haven't been great, but they've done the job. And the defense is the one that's, I think, surprising to folks. So right now, I think you're looking at 9-3, maybe 10-2, maybe more.
Yeah, we all had 7-5 as our season predictions?
Yeah, I don't need to, hammer that home. But yeah, the point is, I don't know if these sports sites update, week by week, win totals or whatever. I don't think they do really. But yeah, 7.5 like before the season, essentially. And now I'm wondering what it would be. 9.5. I mean, 10.5 potentially. I mean, it's not crazy because again, like you said, this Nebraska game, they'll be favored. They are. Northwestern, heavy favorites. Okay, you've got Indiana and even at Maryland, favored as of now. I mean, that leaves, 3 games against currently ranked teams, at Michigan State, at Penn State, and Ohio State. Like dropping all 3 of those would move you to 9-3. But you just got to get one to to get to 10 wins. It's just, and again, Ohio State, bounced back with that win over Rutgers, and they're the team to beat. Until otherwise, until they lose in the Big Ten. But they look more vulnerable. It was discussed for the final few minutes of the broadcast on Saturday between Michigan and Wisconsin, how Michigan looks more equipped to handle Ohio State's speed and athleticism. Like, yeah, I just think you can start really dreaming big with this Michigan team, but a lot does fall on Cade McNamara, like you guys said.
Did you guys see the Ohio State absolutely routing Rutgers on Saturday? I did not see that coming at all. I thought Ohio State would win, but to store 40 something points in the first half against Rutgers, I was like, wow. Ooh.
I know the win, I know their loss to Oregon doesn't look great now, especially after Oregon's loss to Stanford on Saturday. And I said this last week, I'm not ready to write off Ohio State. I think the odds makers still have them as the favorite to win the Big Ten. I still think they probably have the best offense just from a talent standpoint. They got 2 of the best receivers in the country. They can get the quarterback situation figured out, and it looks like they
look good on Saturday.
Yeah, I still think they're the team to beat. Now, they're not the Ohio State of the last couple of years. I don't think their defense is certainly suspect at times, but yeah, I think I think the Big Ten. I wrote this, I think, to some degree on Saturday on MLive, but like I think the Big Ten East is wide open right now. And you said it a couple weeks ago, Andrew. I thought it was a little premature at that point, and I still think it kind of is. But we've seen enough of Penn State, we've seen enough of Ohio State, we've seen enough of Michigan, heck, and even Michigan State, to say, I think any one of these teams could be any one of the other ones on any given night, and that to me makes, the second half of this season so fascinating. And I think this Saturday, I think was it Penn State's playing Iowa. I think that's gonna be a fun game too.
Absolutely.
I like Iowa too.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean that's the big, they're on the West this year, and they're rolling. They look like the best team right now in the Big Ten. But yeah, I mean Michigan's intra-conference schedule looks easier now than it did before the season, with Wisconsin, kind of falling flat, and Nebraska not doing too much, and then Northwestern, like, those are 3 teams at the bottom of the standings right now. At least, like, you avoided Iowa, which is the tough one this year. So yeah, that'll be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. But again, I think the perspective does change now. Is Cade McNamara a quarterback? Aaron, you were saying, like, he's not going to necessarily win you the game. Is the gap with Ohio State still big enough that you need a quarterback to win you the game? Like, do they need JJ McCarthy? Might not be ready by the end of this year anyway, but next year after that, like, is that the quarterback you need eventually, someone with his ceiling to beat him? Or, is the gap small enough now that you just need McNamara to just be at his best, but his best is good enough to beat Ohio State? I mean, I think it's still too early to answer that question, but before the season, like, the answer was no, but yeah.
If Michigan keeps showing what they do defensively, like they did on Saturday against Wisconsin, I think their defense is good enough to keep them in many of these games. Mm-hmm. And then it goes to the offense, to where they can't turn the ball over. They have to be efficient and productive with their drives, where I think the gap has closed. Like I said, I don't think Cade's going to go out there and win you a game with his arm, but I think he's good enough of a game manager, and that's not a knock on him. That's a title the coaches have kind of given him, to where I think Michigan's in a position to beat any Big Ten team this year. I think they could very well go in Happy Valley and win that Penn State game. Doesn't mean they're going to. We'll see here. Penn State's looked very good, but Michigan, and we talked about this before. Coming into the year, I had 3 games. I automatically wrote Michigan off. Wisconsin being the first, Penn State on the road again, and the Ohio State game. Now, I think they can win. We saw Wisconsin Saturday, but now I think they could absolutely beat Penn State or Ohio State. Now, will they? We'll see. But you gotta like what you've seen so far through 5 weeks from this Michigan team.
They're doing the the little things, as sometimes we call them, well too. I mean, we didn't mention Jake Moody yet. Guy goes 3 for 3 on field goals. He's now 8 of 9 on the year. He's got a 52 yarder. He's got a couple 40 plus. He's perfect from inside that. The punting, Brad Robbins has been strong. They got a turnover on that.
Aside from
right,
Ronnie Bell, there's like no injuries. It's been amazing.
Exactly. There's a lot of things that are going right for this team and this program right now. A lot of good vibes, and that was one way to, and the long losing streak in Madison, just in emphatic fashion. With that victory on Saturday. Any more thoughts from that game that we didn't mention? A specific player or something that stood out? I'll just drop one. There was a run Blake Corum had where the safety came in like a missile and they just collided. I think it was in the second quarter. And
I'm surprised Blake Corum got
feet.
back out there relatively quickly. It sounded like he went in the medical tent, but like it stopped dead in his tracks.
Both players
too. I was like,
both players.
Boy.
Yep. I mean, that was a harder impact, I'd say, collision, more G-force or whatever you want to call it than the hit that knocked out Mertz. And that was something. So there's just one play that stood out to me, but anything else?
I thought the moment in between the end of the third and beginning of the fourth quarter, I don't know if TV caught it. Obviously, it went all over social media. The jump around thing at Camp Randall, like they always do it. I mean, it's done before every game. The Wisconsin bench wasn't doing anything. They weren't participating. They were down. You can tell they were upset, mad, whatever term you want to use. Michigan, it was like a dance party out there. I thought that moment was very emblematic of Michigan's start. Like they are confident. They're a confident group. They're having fun. They're loose. And I couldn't help but chuckle in the press box. I'm like, oh my, like they're trying to hijack the whole jump around thing.
Yep.
I thought it was fun. It was fun to watch.
I guess my final thought is, are we going to be seeing more JJ McCarthy on a regular basis now? Or is that just type of one-off type of thing, to a little change up from the Michigan coaching staff there to maybe catch the Wisconsin defense off guard?
Let me set up Aaron by saying this. I sent out in our message, when it happened, I was like, what's going on here? Because initially, when McCarthy starts the second half, you're like, has he made a change? And then Aaron was like, I think it's more of like a run. He's got better legs. He's in for certain plays. And then it became clear that was kind of that was like the plan. I don't know, Aaron, if you got more on that after the game or what, but I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I asked Harbaugh the idea behind that, and that was basically it. It sounds like they're using JJ as kind of another wrinkle to their run offense, because I don't speak for the coaches or anything, but it seems like they don't trust Cade with running the football. I don't think Cade's very quick to begin with.
Right.
So I think it just gives them another option. Obviously, we know JJ can throw the ball. We've seen it, and you saw it Saturday. But when he's got the football and there's that threat of the run and the quarterback read option, I think it adds another dimension to Michigan's offense. Especially if they're struggling to run the football against a good defense like Wisconsin. So I think it's a smart move. I think you'll probably start seeing it more in the coming weeks. They obviously waited to roll it out. But it sounds like that's the approach at this point. It's been clear in talking to coaches the last couple of weeks. I think Ryan can vouch for this too, because we talked to Matt Weiss, the quarterback's coach, last week. But they're dead set on Cade McNamara as a starter. I think a lot would have to happen now for that to change, and then to start JJ. But so far they're rolling with Cade. They like what they have, and they're gonna use JJ obviously on occasion in certain instances. But he certainly gives them another added dimension in their run game.
Well said. It's not like it's a wildcat situation where the other team knows it's a run. I mean, he's a perfectly capable passer. I think the JJ fans would say, yeah, he's actually a better passer too than the starter. But that remains to be seen. I don't think you don't make a change just because things are going well. You should always be looking to improve. But McNamara has played played well, I think. And, the no turnovers is huge. So yeah, take away that second half against Rutgers, and this team has looked really, really good on both sides of the ball in all phases of the game, almost halfway through the season now. We'll remind you here before we wrap up that we have a voicemail line that you can call. Leave us a message about the podcast, about Michigan athletics. Michigan, basketball practices started too. If you want to ask about that, we got Big Ten Media Day coming up this week as well. So start to get into more of that content. But 616-222-1022. That's 616-222-1022. Just say the folks from the Wolverine Confidential podcast sent you. And drop us a message. All right, we'll be back. Yeah,
feel free to vent about our predictions too. I got a couple of emails from fans that, like poking at my eye that I picked them to lose on Saturday. Well, like I told them, I'm not going to get every game right.
Right.
It is what it is.
One may have been from my own father. Anyway, yes, please rate and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And stay tuned for more coverage on MLive.com/Wolverines. Thanks for listening and watching.